Hello everybody. In this video I want to showcase how to create helper functions or base functions or custom functions that are meant to really help developers building applications and integrations do it faster, more easily, and more securely. So there's a couple of key use cases you would build these helper functions for. It could be to simplify a rather complicated API function into a more simple interface. It could be to restrict the level of access you're going to be giving your partners. It could be to take something that's so common logic that applies to many applications and kind of centralize it, manage it in one place and then just distribute it through the library or as a service. So there's a lot of benefits here. And we're just going to build a simple function that's going to take an already pretty simple API that we have and simplify it even a little bit further, but just to illustrate that kind of key point. So first thing I like to do is just kind of prime the AI to make sure we're talking about the right function before I give it instructions on how to do this further. So I like to just basically ask it to kind of find the right function. Chances are, as a developer building these things, you'll get to know your API so well that you won't lean on the AI for discovery, but you might still lean on it for a couple of different things, which I'll showcase here. So here it finds the right function, and I like it. So it's a good example. Now I might say something like, can you wrap that function into a new async function which takes in everything except the host URL and returns just the, let's say, amount and currency. And then let's also give it an instruction to please create a new interface called quote simple, which will be the return type. Again, you could probably just write this yourself. However, I just want to demonstrate a little bit more about the abilities of the AI because many people are not quite familiar with it in terms of its ability to generate really good quality code. So here we have it writing our function, and then it gives us basically the function we asked for. The one thing I would say here is that and this is not a fault of the AI, this is really something that is a Polly issue. So let's go ahead and copy paste this function in here. So we'll go ahead and correct that as we go. And then there's a little bit of a syntactical change we need to make. So the first thing to note is that we don't actually have to explicitly assign the return type. It will be implicitly assumed. So we can go ahead and get rid of this right here. And we can go ahead and get rid of the statement as it's unnecessary. And what's going to happen here is that TypeScript is basically going to assume the response type for this function. So we could see that within the data, we're going to have a price. So let me go ahead and delete this. And you're going to basically have a price, and then the price within it is going to have the amount and the currency. So that was kind of just unnecessary code that it tried to do, and it was actually slightly off. And to fix it would actually be much more complicated than to just let TypeScript assume the types directly. Now, next up, what we can do is go ahead and change this notation. So Polly won't succeed in the deployment with this approach. So we actually, just the limitation of Polly today is that we do require you to write it as async function like this. And that's how we're going to be able to interpret that it's a new function and go ahead and use it. So I can just change that little thing and then change this little arrow right here, and everything else stays the same. So this is something that we do plan on supporting this type. So rather than tuning the AI to avoid it, it's just a gap in our product today. Other than that, we have the host URL here, which we need to set. So the real kind of simplification that this function is going to do is it's going to simplify the interface in by just assuming a host type. There's no need for our partners to have to specify this. We don't want them to hard code it and then potentially have to change it. So we're just going to go ahead and add it in on the fly. And we're going to use that variable that we declared earlier by basically importing Vari. And then here we can go ahead and use Vari to go ahead and actually assign the configuration host URL. And we're going to go ahead and inject it for both performance and security reasons. And so this way, now our partners and consumers and the app developers never have to worry about where the service is hosted. Because it's a variable, it means that we can change the underlying URL and nobody's going to go accidentally hard code to consume it from a specific URL. So this is really just kind of a powerful way to make your applications more loosely coupled. The other benefit we're doing here is maybe we just want to expose the amount in currency. Maybe we don't want to burden the developer with the rest of the payload. Maybe we don't want this partner to see the rest of the payload. Maybe there's sensitive data in there. So this function is now simplifying the interface that we're exposing outward by reducing the amount of data we send back, also making the network traffic a little bit more efficient. Great, so now that we have this, we also have a usage function. So I can actually go ahead and run this. So I can just say TS node, and then I can do something like this, custom functions, and then we have get quote. And we can see that the response comes back exactly how we'd wanted. So super helpful, super powerful. Now let's go ahead and actually deploy this function. And to do that, we'll get rid of the test function. Not a good practice to have your test function inside the same file, because what Polly does is it actually takes the whole file and hosts it and executes the whole file. So, and then the function is just the entry point into it. So you have to be careful because you will double execute if you have execution statements inside your file that you deploy. So really bad practice, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it. So here we're going to go ahead and actually, let's go ahead and repurpose this comment. I like to write the command to deploy the function just above it, so it's easy to copy paste in the future, so I don't accidentally create multiple of them due to a mistyping, etc. So we'll just do npx poly function add, and then we'll do get simple quote. And then in here, we'll specify the name of the file, which is get, or actually it needs to be the full path. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this from down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it a context equals, and we'll just do logistics dot custom fx, or let's call it helper fx. So you have full liberty here. There's probably a naming conventions. This is super highly subjective, so there's not going to be any right answer here. It's really just what makes the most sense for you. So I won't get into kind of the best practices, as it really depends on each customer's needs. And then here I'll just specify that we want this to be a client function. You can deploy it as a server function, which will stand up a whole new service that runs on its own. That's beneficial if you have cross-language applications where you want it to be a standalone service that could be just invoked through any language. Or if you want it to be bundled as part of the client application and then packaged and run by the client, then you would use it as a client function. So again, lots of pros and cons here. I won't get too deep into this at this moment. Just know you have both choices. So let's go ahead and copy this statement. Let's go ahead and execute it. And hopefully we'll have a custom function here in just a few seconds. Okay, great. So it generated a new client-side function for us, and we have the ability to now use it. So again, to keep this demo really simple, I'm just going to test it in the same file I have it in. Again, not a good example, but it will do for this demo. Not a good practice, but it'll do for this demo. So here we need to actually now execute the poly function. So we do poly dot, and we put it in logistics. And then within logistics, we put it in helper function. And we have the get simple quote. Everything else stays the same. So you'll notice I commented this out, which means it's actually going to go against the library now. So if I run this one more time, we can see it still comes back. And now our code is a lot simpler because this logic is actually abstracted. Now, if you want to see where it went, it's actually in your node modules folder under Poly in the library. There'll be client functions. You can look at it here, and you could see the JavaScript compilation of that function. So you could see that this is the actual JavaScript that's actually executed when you use that function. You can modify this file, but be really careful because next time you generate the client library, it all gets wiped away. So this is not meant to be code that is edited directly. Great. Well, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video.